All right, I think it's working now. We'll see. So I was going to call it community, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll call it human ecology, because really, that's really what we, when you're talking about humans living together, how is it any different than ecology? So human ecology, or maybe just living together. I thought about that too. So I just put all three of them on. Now, it really is ecology, though, because there's really kind of three main types of species interactions. The first is predation and parasitism. Now, these are very similar to each other because basically one guy loses, the other guy wins. So maybe it's a tick just sucking the blood out of your body. Maybe it's a cheetah taking down a gazelle, whatever. Somebody wins, somebody loses. Now, the other kind, or the second kind of interaction, is competition. Competition is different. You have two or more species competing for the same resources. It's a lion and a hyena here. And the lions and hyenas are direct competitors, at least in many situations. Then the third is called symbiosis. Now, there are other types that are kind of offshoots of these and more specific. But symbiosis is two species living in a mutually beneficial relationship. Here's a great example. This is the Egyptian plover. And it actually eats food right out of the crocodile's mouth. So the crocodile gets food stuck in its teeth, little pieces of fishermen and stuff like that. And the plover bird will actually sit in there, and the crocodile just holds its mouth open and lets the plover pick the food out of its teeth. That's symbiosis. They're both getting something out of this. Crocodile gets a fresh, clean mouth, and the bird gets a meal. The winner is symbiosis. Why do I say that? Well, it's the most efficient use of resources. Competition and predation tend to be reduced over time through natural selection or niche filling. So what happens is basically competition is a form of pressure. And this pushes animals through evolution to occupy other niches. Even within a species, competition leads to behaviors that reduce it, like territoriality. Oftentimes we think about territories as if they're confrontation, but they're not. They're designed to reduce confrontation. Territories reduce confrontation between individuals. Think of the red-winged blackbird. You go out there during their mating season, you'll see them out. It's kind of almost evenly spaced out over a swamp, sitting on the cattails. The males have established their own little territories where they can show off their pretty red shoulders. Three main types of human interactions as well. So we can apply this to humans. I'm just going to change the terminology a little bit. We have win-lose situations among humans. There's a couple types. The first is force and aggression. Now, this is just basically I'm using force against another person. Maybe I'm stealing something from them. Maybe I'm otherwise harming another person willfully or through negligence. I'm just aggressing against that person. There's another type of win-lose situation, and this is competition. One party beats the other in competition for the same resources. Think about one good example of this. Amazon just totally putting Borders out of business. All right? That's an example of competition. Now, the idea with this, though, is that this is different than just simple force and aggression. This is fair when everybody's playing by the same rules. How about a lose-lose situation? This is when there's no deal, both parties are disappointed. Maybe you got in a fight. And in this case, sometimes walking away is the best option. But there is a better option. And that's the last type of human interaction, and the best, called a win-win situation. And this win-lose, win-win stuff, I first saw it in Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He plays on it a lot. We should always strive for win-win, mutually beneficial exchange. Both parties get something they want. For example, you want lunch more than the cash. He wants the cash more than the hot dog. Now, in this case, it's interesting because this is not a break-even situation. They both come away from this happier than they were before, both of them. So it's like the overall happiness level was actually increased by this exchange. It's not even in the sense that it's break-even. Same thing in the case of, say, employment. She wants your labor more than her money. That's why she's willing to pay you for it. So you're both benefiting. That's why you're smiling. That's why we both say thank you when I'm at the checkout counter at Ocean State. I say thank you when they give me my jar of peanuts. They say thank you when I give them my cash. All right? You want kindness, a listening ear, someone to care for, have fun with. So does she or he. You want friendship and help. So do they. So it doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be material things. There's still an exchange. Everybody benefits. Everybody's happier and better off. So there's two ways to get what you want. The great German sociologist Franz Oppenheimer, he was around the early 1900s. He pointed out that there are two mutually exclusive ways of acquiring wealth. One, the above way of production and exchange, which he called the economic means. Think about the hot dog stand. The other way is simpler in that it does not require productivity. It is the way of seizure of another's goods or services by the use of force and violence. This is the method of one-sided confiscation of theft of the property of others, and interestingly enough, Oppenheimer termed this the political means to wealth. And this goes way back, folks. So, way back there were cavemen, or early humans, and they learned, and I'm confident in this, they learned that aggression against the person and property of your neighbors leads to aggression against yourself by your neighbors. This does not promote a healthy and successful society. They learned that if they respected each other's rights, engaging in voluntary exchange for mutual benefit, they could live peacefully, prosperously, and happily in a successful society. These were simple facts of nature, a natural law, as it were. Now, how do I know that? Because where else did these rules come from? They came because people learned this is things you do, these are things you don't do in social interactions. Political means, according to Oppenheimer, win-lose situation. Economic means, win-win situation. Same goes for us. Go around slapping people in the face, so to speak, and don't be surprised when you get slapped. On the other hand, if we obey the rules, others will be encouraged to do the same, and they usually will, and we'll live in peace instead of stressful chaos, and you'll promote that kind of peaceful, cooperative society. These rules are simple. One has been called the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or maybe you could state that in some prefer the negative form of that. Don't do to others as you would not have them do to you. The non-aggression principle is very closely related. In a civilized society, force may be used only in retaliation and only against those who initiate its use. Very similar principle. These are basically natural laws. When we follow these rules, we are acting according to our nature as humans. And so it is no wonder that this is what works best for making us happy. When we live according to our nature, we'll be like a dog chasing game, a bird in flight, or a horse running like the wind across the plain, happy and fulfilled. And what is true of individuals is true of societies. Just look at the increase in prosperity worldwide since the so-called Scottish Enlightenment in the late 1700s. David Hume, Adam Smith, John Locke, Gibbon, who wrote The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. Those guys were part of this. John Locke's philosophy of human rights, of individual rights, is basically where Thomas Jefferson and the others got the Declaration of Independence text from. And think of what's happened since then in the world and how much freedom and prosperity has increased. In fact, a right is just any logical consequence of these simple natural rules. That's why they were called, by the Scottish philosophers, natural rights. The essence of the political means is physically forcing others to do what you want or don't want them to do. It might be called instead the coercive means. It can be actually political. This is just a small part of the Code of Federal Regulations. The Code of Federal Regulations was 158,000 pages of text in 2009. I don't know what it's up to now. Democracy. Oh, we so like democracy, but as Thomas Jefferson said, a democracy is nothing more than a mob rule where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49%. Isn't that true? Sure. This country's not supposed to work like that. We're supposed to have a piece of paper called the Constitution that prevents that, right? Whether it does or not is a matter of opinion. Maybe it's us forcing other countries to do things that we want them to do or don't want them to do. It can be what some people would call capitalistic, preventing others from using your ideas, preventing others from using the engineered genes that you have created or the compounds that you have created, preventing other people from making the same compounds without paying you an exorbitant fee, for example. Or forcing others to pay for your mistakes. So, what was it, 2008, with the big crash recently, right? Some big guys lost lots of big money, right? But you know what? They didn't really lose it after all because somebody else paid for it. They took the risk. They made the stupid decisions to buy bundled packages that nobody understood and derivatives and whatnot. They made the stupid decisions. Everybody else pays. Their stocks go up over the next 5 years. So there's lots of ways that force can be employed. It can be personal. So maybe it's trying to control others through violence or threats of violence, whether you do it yourself or you have someone else carry out the threat. Now, though technically not the same as physical coercion, trying to control others through manipulation follows the same basic principle. It's about trying to control others, about being a control freak. And this violates natural law because you don't want to be controlled. So the economic means, the essence of it is voluntary human relationships, social cooperation, mutually beneficial exchange, following the golden rule and the non-aggression principle, and it can be applied in all spheres of life. So let's look at some practical examples. What does it look like in personal relations? Well, it looks like kindness, courtesy, and respect. It looks like persuasion instead of coercion. You want to get somebody to do what you want them to do? Well, there's a legitimate way to do that. Persuade them to do it. Mutually beneficial relationships. This is one of my favorite quotes. Alfred North Whitehead was a historian and philosopher, and he wrote, "The creation of the world," said Plato, "is the victory of persuasion over force. Civilization is the maintenance of social order by its own inherent persuasiveness as embodying the nobler alternative. The recourse to force, however unavoidable, is a disclosure of the failure of civilization." I love that line. The recourse to force, however unavoidable, is a disclosure of the failure of civilization, either in the general society or in a remnant of individuals. Now, the intercourse between individuals and between social groups takes one of these two forms, force or persuasion. You can see maybe even the influence of Oppenheimer in this definition. Commerce is the great example of intercourse by persuasion. War, slavery, and governmental compulsion exemplify the reign of force. Respect for others' rights, following the golden rule in the NAP. Example, claiming a spot at the beach. This is kind of an interesting example that we're all probably familiar with. It's natural that no one takes your spot after you have homesteaded it on the beach. It's also natural to try and get there early so you get a better spot, right? it's about waiting your turn. I mean, these are just simple examples, but they demonstrate what I'm calling this natural law. It's natural. Don't believe me? Try violating the rules sometime. Next time you're in a really big line, really long line, cut. Cut in front of somebody. See what happens. This is natural. You know, now, by the way, this is a good example to point out that not everybody follows these rules, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that these are natural rules that make things work smoothly and peacefully. There are countries of the world where I'm told a lot of people don't follow these rules. And what it leads to is chaos. People don't follow the rule of waiting in line. People are always jostling and cutting in front. It creates chaos. This is a little more confusing, right? You're at a four-way stop, who goes first? But obviously it's irritating if you've been waiting there a while and some guy just pulls up and pulls right through, right? Sometimes it's not entirely clear who's supposed to go, but usually it is. Voluntary exchange. We exchange our labor for what we need or want, and the market delivers. Where would we be without this? We'd have no light bulbs, computers, iPods, phones, cars, etc. Now, it might not be fun to work at McDonald's. Anybody ever worked at McDonald's? It's not a lot of fun, all right? However, you get paid. That's why you do it, right? Unless you're into like self-punishment or something, and that's why you're doing it. But you're probably not. You're looking to get paid so that you can buy the iPad or whatever it is you're shooting for, your car, or you pay your insurance, pay for college, whatever you want to do. In a competition, now this is interesting because a lot of people don't like competition. And I even started out by saying symbiosis was better than competition. But we have to remember that in competition, if everybody's under the same rules, then no one's being forced. Now you need to be a little careful because in the real world of business, it's often not actually fair. There are rules that favor people. There are good old boy political networks that favor certain businesses over the others. So it's not always fair. But if it's fair, then no one's going to argue about it. This guy was the fastest. This burger was the best, right? I'm not going to say it's not fair for me to go to McDonald's instead of Burger King if I like McDonald's better. I just like it better. So this follows natural law. And interestingly enough, the force, if there's any force at all, that's what has to be used to eliminate the competition. The competition itself involves no force. Now, what about large interactions among whole populations of people? Can this actually work at the scale of a nation or nations? The same rules must apply, folks, since they're just groups of people. So a nation not obeying these rules is also violating natural law. That's what I would argue. Now, amazing things can actually be done by totally voluntary organizations. Greenpeace has done, maybe not lately, but at least in their inception, in their early years, they did tremendous things. I like to point out an example. When I was in high school, I was really into Greenpeace. And I used to hang up their posters around the school and stuff like that. People would tear them down. And one of their big campaigns then was that the tuna fisheries were killing dolphins by the thousands. Dolphins would get caught in their nets. They used to use these big nets, and dolphins would get caught. They'd die in there because they drown. And then they just discard them and throw them over the ship. And so that's what started the whole dolphin-free tuna campaign. You can't find a can of tuna now that doesn't say dolphin-free tuna on it. And there were no laws involved. There was no fines. It was a campaign that was extremely effective. Here's another example. These guys have done more than probably anybody else in eliminating polio around the world, the Rotary organization. Kiva, you guys have heard about this on the TV in the mornings, Monday mornings. Have you guys, anybody ever gone to this website? It's really pretty cool. What you do is you give a loan. They're called microloans. So I go on the website and I look, say I'm interested in Africa. So I go to Africa and I say, I look at all these people who want loans, and maybe this one guy wants to buy a pig because he wants to raise the pig and breed it and sell the pigs. So he wants to buy a pig, so he needs $50 to buy a pig. You can actually go on there and lend him $50. It's interest-free, and you always get paid back. These people always pay you back. It takes a while sometimes, but you'll get your money back eventually, and then you just re-lend it to people. This has done amazing things around the world. All sorts of third world countries where people have been able to get loans that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to get. So there's a lot of ways that voluntary and organizations can do a lot of great stuff. One of my favorite examples of a voluntary organization is the internet. And it's really, one of the most interesting things is that it's not organized by any one person or agency or centralized thing of any sort. It's totally a self-organizing system. Over time, it has become extremely complex, well-organized, not centrally controlled, and yet there's a lot of order there. Now, sure, there's bad things, and there's, stuff you got to watch out for. There always is. There's always going to be creeps. There's always going to be people trying to do bad things through any technology. But for the most part, it's done a tremendous amount of good. So, we have a political coercive means breeding chaos. We have the economic voluntary means leading to spontaneous, unplanned order and harmony. I like to, because I studied ants for my PhD, I've always been interested in what's called spontaneous order and self-organizing systems. And that's what an ant colony is. A lot of people think that the queen somehow directs the colony. She doesn't. The most the queen does is put out a hormone here and a hormone there to kind of change the behavior slightly of the ants. But she doesn't direct. In fact, nobody directs the colony. It's a bunch of individual ants that respond to stimuli according to certain rules, and that's what results in what is sometimes very complex behavior. I had a colony of ants. I was trying to grow the colony of fire ants in a box. And to try to keep them in the box, keep them from coming out of the box, what I did was I had like a platform in the middle and I put water around the outside. Well, I found them getting across the water by making like little bridges out of their bodies to get across the water. Well, nobody pointed that, there was no ant that said, hey, you guys go over there and you get over there and make a bridge. No, literally, they don't have the brains for that. Their brains like the size of a pinhead. They're just like little robots. But they were able to self-organize themselves and get out of that box and defeat whatever goal I had to try to keep them in there. Another example, I had a big chunk of a fire ant mound. They make their nests in the soil. They dig tunnels through the soil. I had a big chunk. I wanted to get the ants out because I wanted to analyze it for carbon. And I didn't want to have all the dead ants in there. I wanted the soil carbon. So I just put it out. I figured if I let this thing dry out, I put it outside on a sheet. If I let it dry out, the ants will come out of it. They'll move out. No, they sealed themselves into it. So the first thing I know, they're sealing off all the holes around the outside of this clump to reduce moisture loss. Again, not something that was directed by any particular, it's not that the queen was in there saying, "Quick, seal the hole, guys." Queen wasn't doing a thing except laying eggs. That's all she does. So anyway, this is an example, I think. Things like the internet, stuff like that, are examples of spontaneous order. So here's a summary. You can live according to coercive means, control and be controlled, violate the golden rule, the NAP. This is anti-civilization. It leads to chaos. Predation and parasitism, win-lose situations, and this one here is key. This is how you'll live your life, looking for prey and fleeing from predators. And it leads to stress, strife, stifling of your potential, and shortening of your lifespan. On the other hand, there's the voluntary means, live and let live. This follows the golden rule and the NAP. It results in emergent order, symbiosis, win-win situations, and instead of looking for predators, you're looking for mutually beneficial exchange. What can I do for you? What can you do for me? And leads to maximum happiness. Okay, now, just a little point at the end here. When I thought through this, I thought, well, some people are going to be worried because if I can't make other people give me what I need, then what if they reject me? What if they won't? What if I can't get anything? because they have nothing to exchange. But the cool thing is that we all do. See, we're all unique in the world and in history, even genetically. Each of us is unique. So each of us has unique things to offer. We're all unique individuals with tremendous potential, unique potential that only we can really control. More importantly, we can all offer what we all need most, which is kindness, respect, care, and a listening ear. And even if they still reject us, we still experience fulfillment that comes from living according to our nature. And we're also instilled with self-sufficiency. So only you can decide whether to live like a tick, sucking the life out of others and yourself, or to live symbiotically with others in mutually beneficial relationships and social cooperation. Start close to home in family relationships, at school, with your peers, in the class, in hallways, and, I know it's hard, online. See other people not as prey, but as potential candidates for symbiosis, mutually beneficial relationships. And if you just can't get along, then opt for walking away rather than predation. Make yourself more attractive to others by being kinder, more helpful, and more useful. Imagine a voluntary world where everyone followed the golden rule and lived symbiotically, in mutually beneficial relationships, in win-win relationships, and voluntarily. Is that a dream? Maybe it is, but it's our nature. Begin today. So, anybody offended?